Hello, everyone. Welcome to the anatomy of the female reproductive system. Now, this is part of sexual anatomy and physiology. Okay, so we have the vulva here. Now, at first glance, the female reproductive system may seem more advanced than the male reproductive system, but it really isn't more complex, anatomically speaking. Now, but when we get into the physiology, it gets a little bit more advanced, but it's nothing that you haven't dealt with before. Okay, so going anteriorly to posteriorly, we have the mons pubis. Now, this is the fatty layer that is sitting deep to the pubic hair. Now, it's thought to act as a cushion during sexual intercourse. Next, we have the clitoris here, and it's covered by the clitoral hood. We'll get more into the anatomy of the clitoris in the future slides. And now we have the urethral meatus. The meatus is the canal, so that's just the urethral opening of the vulva. When we talk about the vulva, that's the external portion of the female reproductive tract. So we have the labia majora, which are the lips on the outside of vagina that are covered with skin. Now the labia minora are actually the more red erythematous tissue. That's more on the inside. That's more palpable. Now we have the vestibule, which is more deep inside the vulva, and we will talk about that. But the vestibule in general is just this whole portion right here, middle portion. And now we have the introitus, or the vaginal canal, right here, the vaginal opening. And inside the vaginal opening, we have the hymen, which we will get into in the next slide. And then we have the perineum, which is the region between this vulva and the anus, and that's highly sensitive, highly innervated. Remember, you talked about genital end bulbs of the male reproductive tract, so there could be a lot of genital end bulbs there. Okay, so hymen. Now, hymen is a very thin membrane of cells that cover the vaginal opening that can be found in a variety of different forms, shapes, or what have you. But in general, most women have this, and remember, everyone's different, so it could be in a variety of different shapes. The imperforate hymen, imperforate, you can think it probably means there's no perforations, and you'd be right. Do you think maybe there might be issues? Well, I don't know. Maybe I have to research that. With the annular hymen, what do you think? Annular means ring, so it's like a tiny little circle in the middle. A septate hymen, well, maybe there's a septum in between, and yeah, there's a septum. And the cribriform, I think about the cribriform plate in the skull, kind of looks cribriform, so cribriform means many holes. And the paracentroides hymen, it's kind of the most open type. There's not really much of the hymen left. And then when the female has sex or gives birth to a baby, these membranes, this hymen-like structure breaks. It's no longer palpable or visible. Now there's one more thing we missed. Those are the Bartholin's glands here, and they kind of serve the same purpose as, or a parallel purpose as the bulbourethral glands, and they kind of lubricate the vagina. But we'll talk more about that in the physio section. But they kind of sit right here, and then the Bartholin's ducts will kind of be on the outside inferiorly to the vaginal opening. Okay, let's get more interiorly. So the clitoris. Now let's first talk about development. So when you're in the womb, you kind of are undifferentiated. In the first 7 weeks are undifferentiated. So you could either have a penis or a vagina. You can kind of see how the male and the female look very, very similar because, well, this could be a vagina and that could be a clitoris, or this could be a penis and this could be the urethra, corpus spongiosum. Well, eventually you become differentiated, but you can kind of see, well, the clitoris looks like like a tiny penis, and you'd be right because it develops from the same fetal structure or embryonic structure here, and eventually become differentiated. I just wanted to show you that they're very similar. Now, one different thing that we have with the clitoris here, and this is the vaginal opening with the skin on it, and you can kind of see this ghost of it. But, well, if you look close, you can realize, well, there's no corpus spongiosum. You see a cross section here. Well, you can tell this is a clitoris. It's got pretty much of everything that the penis has, except there's no corpus spongiosum. And well, that's because you don't pee out of your clitoris. There's no need for a urethra on the clitoris. You already have a urethral opening, or urethral meatus right here. But you don't have on the penis, so you need a urethra and the corpus spongiosum. Well, these two wings of the clitoris are called the crura, singular crus, and this is the corpus cavernosum. So part of the erectile tissue. And much like the penis, the clitoris also gets erect during stimulation, during sexual intercourse. And now we will have the bulbs of the vestibule. That's what I was talking about, the vestibule. The vestibule gets erect when sexual intercourse is initiated. In most cases, not every case. Depends. Then we have a vaginal opening here. And then the clitoral glands, much similar to the glands of the penis. Except it's kind of bent downwards. And there's a prepuce over the clitoris. Well, this is just the basic anatomy. You don't need to know much more than this. But I just want you to know that the clitoris develops from the same embryonic structure as the penis does. Okay, now let's talk about the uterus. Now, the uterus is more of the internal structure, and some people get the cervix mixed up with the vaginal canal or the introitus, but they are very different things. Now, the uterus is more deep to the vaginal canal, and we begin at the cervix, which is the opening to the uterus. And we get into the uterus, and then this is the lumen of the uterus. Kind of, you can probably call it the lumen of the uterus, or the fundus, but you don't need to know that one. We have the fallopian tubes of the oviducts, and then the fimbriae of the fallopian tubes that sweep up the ovum from the ovary when it's time to get pregnant. And then, well, there's layers to the uterus you should remember too. Remember, the uterus is a pear-shaped muscle. Well, we have endometrium. You can probably see that it's the epithelial lining of the inside, and that's what's shaved off every time you go through the menstrual cycle, if you are a female out there. Then we have the myometrium. Myo means muscle, so that's a bunch of smooth muscle cells that kind of all contract during the menstruation. And then we have the perimetrium, which is just the outer lining of the uterus. And well, we have the anatomy of the ovary now. Well, the ovary is more of a physiology thing, but we'll go into it too. During pre-ovulatory phase, well, the follicle begins to develop, and we call these follicle cells that are surrounding the primary ovum. Okay, the primary follicle begins to develop throughout the ovulatory phase and ovulation. And these follicles begin to develop, and there's nursing cells in there that nurse the ovum to make sure it's healthy and everything. And eventually, as you go on through the ovulatory phase, you have mature follicle, and the secondary ovum is split off. It's a second polar body. So during meiosis, only one of the resulting gametes is able to become an actual egg. And eventually the follicle ruptures, and then the ovum is liberated to plant inside the endometrium if it does get fertilized. And then this remaining this follicle right here becomes the corpus luteum. And the corpus luteum eventually decomposes, releases some hormones, which we'll talk about in physio. Lastly, we want to talk about the female breasts, and well, there's a hormone that controls this, and it's called prolactin and then oxytocin, but we'll go through that in the physio section. So we have blood vessels here that supply it, and then we have the pectoralis major and pectoralis minor. Well, those are all muscles. It has nothing to do with it, because males have it too. Or where we get different is, well, we have a lot of adipose tissue in the breast, and we have a lot of suspensory ligaments. It's not here, you should write it down, but there are suspensory ligaments that hold the breast up. And then there are lactiferous ducts, and each lobe is made up of a bunch of lobules, and then each lobule is made up of a bunch of alveoli, which you should also write that down because it's not here. But alveoli secrete the milk, or they produce the milk, and the milk is eventually secreted through the lactiferous ducts and out through the nipple. Well, that was a very basic overview of the female reproductive system and secondary sex characteristics. I hope this helped you a little bit, and I thank you for joining me. I will see you guys next one. Goodbye.